Hello everyone and welcome to the penultimate build of Gran Turismo 7 Custom Project Set 3, the Pagani Zonda Cinque. If you've ever played Need for Speed Hot Pursuit on the PS3 or 360, not the original PS2 version, then this car will be very familiar to you as it served as the mascot car for that game. For those who don't recognise this car, it was originally built to be the last Zonda model. This was before Pagani decided to make another few Zonda models, each planned to be the last Zonda, but this was the first time they actually made a car that was intended to be the last Zonda in the lineup. It is essentially a road legal Zonda R, hence the base car of this build, and only 5 of them were ever built, hence the name Cinque, which is Italian for 5, and yes, that is how you pronounce it. And it was made at the request of one particular Pagani dealership in Hong Kong. It is essentially the ultimate road legal Zonda, taking the already fantastic Zonda F and incorporating as much of the absurdity from the Zonda R into it as was possible, while still being a legal road car. The livery you see here on this car was made by another player in the community, and I've left a link in the description for you to use it for yourselves. Now we can head to the tuning shop and fit our custom parts to this car. So, like I said, this car is essentially a road legal Zonda R, so as you would expect, a lot of the parts needed for this build are essentially used to downtune the absurd Zonda R we're using as a base car. Of course, with the Zonda R being a race car, there are some limitations to what we can do. For example, the racing silencer and racing brake discs that are fitted to the Zonda R by default are pretty overkill for a road car, but they can't be removed or changed unfortunately, so we just have to go with what we can here. With that said, in the sports section, you will need the sports soft tires. Like with other builds, you can go for sports hard or sports medium. I've decided that since the Zonda Cinque is such a powerful and absurd road car to begin with, that sports softs just make more sense in this case, but you could go for hards or mediums if you want, entirely up to you. In the club sports section, you'll want the power restrictor and the ballast. In the semi-racing section, the fully customizable computer, I believe, is fitted by default, but if not, you'll want to buy it. You'll also want the fully customizable LSD, the fully customizable manual transmission. In the racing section, the racing silencer and racing brake discs are fitted by default, so is the brake balance controller, and I believe the suspension as well, but if not, you'll want to buy that. Racing hards are here by default, but we're not using them. In the extreme section, you will want nothing, and the same goes for the ultimate section. So quite a cheap tuning guide once you get over the very expensive base car, but parts you'll need not too expensive, which is quite a good thing, I suppose. So now we can head back to the garage and we can get onto our tuning guide here. But just before that, a quick thing to note here is that the real car is listed as having 669 horsepower, whereas my build has 671 horsepower. It is fairly close, but I still thought it was worth mentioning here just to point it out. But 2 horsepower isn't going to make a real difference, to be honest. So now we can get into the tuning for this car. For our tyres, we have the Sport Softs fitted. For the suspension, it is fully customizable and the body height is set to 85mm on the front and 100 on the rear. This is a slight difference, but that gives us the real world height of 1151mm for the car. And as you saw from the start, it doesn't actually make a massive difference to the look of the car. It still looks normal, so we can go ahead with that. The anti-roll bar is set to 3 on the front and rear. The compression on the dampers is set to 30 front and rear, with 40 front and rear for the expansion. Our natural frequency is set to 2.75 on both the front and rear. Our negative camber angle is 2.0 front and rear, and our toe angle is set to 0.10 towed out on the front and 0.20 towed in on the rear. Differential is fully customizable with an initial torque value of 20, acceleration sensitivity of 25, and a braking sensitivity of 35. These are all on the rear, and the front values cannot be adjusted because the car is rear-wheel drive. The downforce of this car is set to 400 on the front and 600 on the rear. The ECU is fully customizable with an output of 91%, which brings us 671 horsepower, which is as close we can get to the real world value. Our ballast is set to 140 kilos, and I've put that at a -20 position, which gives us the real world weight distribution for the Pagani Zonda Cinque of 4753. Our power restrictor is untouched in this build. The transmission is fully customizable manual, and it is set to 350 kilometers per hour. That is an automatic setting there. The nitrous is not fitted. Our turbocharger is not fitted. The air cleaner and silencer, exhaust manifold, none of that can be altered. The handbrake is not changed. The brake controller is not used. Steering angle kit is not used, and none of this can be adjusted either. And you can see there is no parts we can fit here anyway. So with all our parts now in place and our tuning done, all it's left to do is see how this car performs in practice. So, how does this car perform in practice? Well, it's still a Zonda R at its core, so it's still a really good car. Despite this being a road legal version of a race car, the Cinque isn't that much of a downgrade from the Zonda R it's based on. If this car was in the game for real, I think it would be one of the best road cars in the game, obviously behind cars like the Valkyrie, but that's not exactly a fair comparison. The biggest downside of this car is that it is still classed as a race car, making it not eligible for any road car events, which is a shame, but there isn't really much we can do about that. Another thing to note is, unfortunately, we cannot change the Zonda R badge on the back of the car, which you may have seen throughout this video. I tried, but you cannot put any decals on that part of the car, so it will always say Zonda R instead of Zonda Cinque, which is kind of annoying, but again, not much we can do about it there. This car naturally feels great through corners and has great top-end speed. With a little tweaking, it can be a great Le Mans cash grind car, so it can pay for itself in a couple of those events. So, that will do it for this build. Let me know if you enjoyed it, and let me know if you ever played Need for Speed Hot Pursuit and used this car in that game. Stay tuned tomorrow for the final build of this series. Thank you all for watching, and have a great day.